Welcome to Maya Dynamics Level 1, Week 7 actually. Week 7, great. Alright, Julius is in the classroom. We're missing a few students today, but I'm hoping that they will start to show up in a minute. So any questions, Julius, just run them in the chat window, okay? Just you and me now. Perfect, so today we're going to continue the conversation on goals that we started last week. And going to show you a few more tricks that you can do with that. So last week, the main thing was to get the particles attached and following a surface. But the particles themselves weren't moving, okay? It was the surface that had the motion and the deformation. Today I'm going to show you how you can make particles then move along a surface and follow the contour and what you can use that for, all right? And as usual, we're going to be combining this with techniques from previous weeks and so on. So to start, we're going to just jump into... I have a little scene prepared here. There we go, with 7. Perfect. And I have this thing here, which is just, let me just delete the particles. And it's just a terrain, okay, a piece of geometry, as you can see, that has some deformations. And there is also this model right here, which is something that looks like a tank. Okay, so I downloaded this one for free out of TurboSquid as usual. Okay, so I went in, I found in this case a tank. It looked pretty cool, and it's made of multiple components. Right now you can see that wheels are separate. Okay, there's lots of stuff that lots of parts that are grouped together under this group over here, and then all of them form this tank. The tank itself, as I said before, is pointing. Okay, as you can see on the positive X. I'm talking about requirements for the instancer that we talked about probably 2-3 weeks ago. So my idea is then to take this tank, a bunch of tanks actually, and have them move along this surface over here, okay? So we're going to be using goals for that. And this is a very, very useful technique, okay? I use it in pretty much in every film that I worked in one way or another. Either golden particles to a surface and the surface moves, or I move particles along a surface. That is one of those bits of information or tricks that you have, and you will end up using them so much. And if you really understand the concept and how this thing works and what's actually happening in the dynamics, you can use this technique for many things that as you get more experience, you will realize all the applications that you can use for something like that. I will continue, I will be diving deeper and deeper onto this topic, some of these things on the next batch of courses that are coming after these courses are over. Whatever it's called, the case studies. Okay, case studies. I'm going to be doing one case study a month, hopefully. Their courses are 4 weeks, and then I take effects from films, big shots, and then I go and do them myself, and I show you the way that I can, the path that I will take personally to do something like that. And then I'll be obviously using a lot of these things and probably going a little bit deeper. In these courses of 12 weeks, I have to cover so much information that I can just give you a solid understanding, but then let you practice on your own. So if you want to keep exploring those, keep an eye on our Facebook page, where I'm always telling, or go to our website, you will see the case study program. You can enroll, and they start after 2 weeks after this course is over. So perfect. So let's go ahead and do what we were set to do right now. We're going to select the surface, and I'm going to emit particles of it. This step is not necessary, doesn't have to be exactly this. You don't have to emit the particles from this surface, but if you're going to go to the particles to the surface anyway, then it makes more sense just to use the same thing, right? I could have made an emitter somewhere else and have the particles go here. It's irrelevant. I just think it's less data if you just emit directly from the geometry you want to go to. So you're going to emit from object. I'm going to use obviously a surface emitter. Let's call this, let's say this is the tank emitter. Hit create, and we know what happens. We don't need to hit play, so there's no need for that. We're automatically going to grab these particles, which I can call tank particles, and I'm going to gold them to the surface just like we did last week. Okay, so particles, gold, and I'm going to gold them with a goal weight of 1. Okay, so they're completely attached to the surface. Okay, based on the principle of last week, we said that the default behavior is that these particles will attach themselves to the CVs in the order of the CVs. Okay, ID of the particle matching a number of the CV on this plane here. And I want to show you in this case. Okay, we saw last week we worked with spheres and cylinders and things that are a bit easier to deal with. This is a plane that has been created. It was sculpted using the sculpting tool, and then probably was smooth again, right? So the order of the CVs is not that normal. It's not that organized as with the sphere, for example, right? So what I'm gonna do is just to show you, give you an idea where you could, different effects, okay, that you can get. I'm gonna hit play with the default behavior. And you can see what's happening, how these particles are. Let me just load this, I'm sorry. This, I want to make sure that, yeah, perfect. Okay, so take a look. You see how the particles are being, I'm going to just let it play. And I'm sure you will start getting ideas of what you can use this for, or, just kind of remember. You can see the order of the CVs is not regular as with the sphere from the bottom to the top, for example. This, you can see that because it has been smooth, it's filling in like in waves like in lines, So, I don't know. I'll just put it out there because it could be useful. Let me just want to isolate the particles so you can see, and probably change the color of the background. Here you will see it perfectly. So I'm going to run it one more time. So you can see it skips a few rows of CVs, then does the next row, and then it goes in and fills in the rest. So this could be useful for something. I don't know, eventually. Just know that, it could do this kind of effect. Okay, you can see that now it's filling in all the gaps. So very matrix-like probably. So there we go. But that's not what I want really. I want to have particles scattered everywhere on the surface, right? So let's go back to normal. And let's go ahead and bring back our surface. And we're going to do the same thing we did last week to scatter those points everywhere. Basically, grab the particles, go to the attribute editor, open the particle shape, and we're going to add a couple of attributes, remember? Goal U and goal V. This is well documented on the last week's video for those of you watching the recording. So if you forgot, go to week 6 and then you will get your answer. So here we go. Goal U and goal V has been created, and then I'm going to go to the creation expression, and we're going to say that the goal U, we haven't checked the UVs, okay, but I mean with you, I haven't checked them with you. So let's go in and take a look at what the UVs are doing. That's obviously a step that you should do, just to make sure that these things are normalized, and in my case they are perfectly normalized from 0 to 1. So I know that I can very quickly put an expression in here that is going to say goal U. You could do random 1 like we did last week. That's totally fine. I'm going to show you something different today, and it's slightly faster. Okay, we talk about almost if it's not enough particles, if it's only a few particles, it's hard to even perceive it. But if it's lots of particles, then you will see a difference. Instead of using a random expression, you can just say parent U. This expression will evaluate a little bit faster. Parent U is basically the position where the particle is born, the position on the surface. Okay, the surface position. So basically, you tell them, well, whatever you are born. Basically, by doing this, by adding goal U and goal V, you let the particles free to place themselves along the surface, so they're not connected to the CVs anymore. And by saying then that the goal U is equal to the parent U is basically saying whatever you're born on the surface, I don't care where, but stay there. That's basically the rule. This evaluates a little bit faster than using a random expression. And then you copy paste that and then do the same for V. Perfect. No errors, everything is good. We run that again, and you can see now we get what we expected, which is just particles scattered on the surface. Okay. Now, what do I want to do with these particles? Okay, if I want to use the instancer to place some tanks in there, I think I have way too many particles. Right? I'm going to handle with so many tanks that it's not really realistic. Okay, so let's go in and limit ourselves to a few particles. I'm gonna show you. I have another example today that we'll use a lot more part. We're gonna do like a little waterfall or something. So bear with me. What I will do is then use the max count, and I don't need 6,200 tanks. That's ridiculous. But you can do it if you want it, right? You can see it's very easy to do. I'm actually gonna hang out with somewhere more like 25 tanks to begin. So we're gonna get just 25 particles. I think I'm gonna use probably more. I'm gonna use 100 tanks. Okay, that's about right for now. I'm not gonna make the particles spheres. I believe you can see them being they're green. But if you don't see them, Julius, just shout. I mean, it will become very noticeable now once I do the instancer. So I'm gonna grab the entire group for the tank, and I'm gonna go then, as usual, back to dynamics, and we're just gonna use the instancer to place those tanks in there. Instancer replacement. We know what to do here. Everything is good. Hit create. Give it a minute. There's 100 tanks, and now they look like it's a lot of particles and a lot of tanks in there. So I'm gonna reduce my count again. I think I'm gonna go back to 25. At least for keeping the class moving fast. So there you go, 25 tanks, perfect. We still have no motion, but at least we're getting there. Now, what I want to do is have those particles move, or those tanks move along this surface, and not only move along, but I want to be able to respect. Because I could make them slide. I could make them just move to the right with a force field if I need it. But actually what I do want is these particles to respect the topology, okay, of this ground plane and orient themselves correctly, actually. So what I'll do is use goals to create that behavior, okay? So far we've been giving orders to these particles on creation. We did it last week, we did it this week. And these orders that pertain to the goal. Meaning that we only give them instructions when they're born, but we haven't even started playing with what happens when you start modifying that goal on a per frame basis, okay? So on evaluation, on runtime. And that's when particles start to actually move. And it's very simple if you think about it. Right now, each particle has a position in U and a position in V that we arbitrarily gave using not the random expression, but using a similar way, right? Using the parent. I can just say, well, take that position, whatever it is, in every frame, add to it a value, any value that I want. And if you think about it, the goal U or V or both, in this case, will increase. And what do we know for sure? We know for sure that these UVs on this plane are from 0 to 1. We just checked them. So I know that these particles won't, once they reach 1, we don't know what's going to happen. We'll see in a minute. But I know that they can move freely from 0 to 1. That's moving around the whole piece of geometry we have. So let's go ahead and check it out. So let's go back into the expressions, back to the goal U and goal V, but this time I'm going to modify them in runtime. And what do I need to say? Well, basically I just need to say, take whatever number you have, which comes from the creation, right? And add or subtract, whatever you want. But you need to see the direction, right? But I'm going to be adding to it a number. So I'm going to say, for example, the goal U is going to be equal to the goal U. You know that I don't like to do it, but I'm just going to show you this way, the long way. So goal U plus 0.01, for example. So what happens in this case? Well, I take the goal U on the first frame from creation, and I'm adding to it 0.01. If that value was 0, then you know what's going to happen, right? 0.01, 0.02, 0.03. Every single frame we're going to be adding this number to itself. So this is one way to type that expression, but don't do that, please. Just get used to doing this. Plus equal is the way to go, man. This is the more elegant, more the nicer way to do it. So this is the way to go. Goal U plus equal 0.01. Let's see what that does. Hit OK. Nothing seems to change, okay, at the beginning. But now if you start playing the scene, let's go rewind and hit play. You can see that these tanks are starting to do something. So they're starting to move. You can see they're flowing along. They're not orienting themselves yet, because we can fix that very easily. but the flow is happening. Now, it's happening in the direction that I don't really want them to do that. I want them to do it on the longer side. So let's go in and change it. We know that we put, the expression is in runtime, and we're modifying goal U. Let's go ahead and change it to V. Okay, if you don't know which direction the surface is going, do what I did. You try one, if not, then switch it. I'm switching from U to V, and now these tanks are going to move in the other direction. So hit rewind, hit play, and there they go. The orientation, don't worry about it. What matters to me is that these guys are moving. I'm going to take a peek at the classroom, make sure that I have this phobia now that it's just you today, Julius. That is really weird, but hey, enjoy. No, actually, someone just showed up, so that's good. No questions so far, Julius? Rodrigo, I know that you just joined, so. But any questions so far? Nothing. All right, perfect. No yet. That's good. No worries. All right, cool. So these guys they're moving around. Perfect. And look what happens when they reach the end of the surface. Okay, these guys are moving, and they reach the end and they stop. Okay, this is because the goal U is going above 1. Remember, we're adding every frame. Okay, and once it reaches 1, they mean they reach the end of the surface, and that number will continue to grow, 1.1, 1.2, whatever, but the UVs don't go that far. So basically the tanks just stop. That's what's happening in here. So just something to keep in mind. So that means that these guys have all of them goal V values higher than 1. That's all. Perfect. It looks kind of funky, right, to have those tanks. I'm going to hide first. I'm going to hide the original tank. But it looks kind of funky having those tanks sliding or not orienting themselves. So let's fix that. And we did that with the planes already. So if you remember, if you need a refresher, go back to a couple, I think it's 2-3 weeks, to the Instancer class, and then you will see, in depth more. But we know by now that if we open the Instancer tab, what I need to do is orient these tanks based on their velocity. So the aim direction is going to be the velocity. You can see that automatically the tanks change direction. And what is the best part of all is that now these guys are really respecting the topology. Okay, you can see I'm going to stay right there and take a look when they finish the slope. They start, perfect. Okay, so this is working really well, which is great. So we have all that taken care of. You can see this looks pretty cool in here. Okay, you can see how they are climbing. Let's let them play. They climb and then they start to go. Perfect. Okay, so it looks very nice. But you see, check it out what happens when they reach the end. Okay, so these tanks come in, and once they reach the end, they go in and snap, almost like park themselves, right? So the reason behind this is, like I said, the particle reaches a value in goal V greater than 1 and the particle stops. If the particle stops, the velocity becomes 0. And because these tanks orient themselves, okay, you can see the aim direction is based on the velocity. If the velocity is 0, then they point in 0. And 0 happens to be positive x, which is the axis that I have here. So that's just the way it is. Basically, this technique, you wouldn't probably use it if you needed to see the end of the surface. You will let the surface roll, or even better, you will place your camera, okay, somewhere, let's say somewhere there or something, where you don't really see the end of the surface, right? So actually, I'm going to leave my camera here, and that's going to reveal the next problem, which is the tanks show up magically everywhere. So that's not good. Let's say that your shot is something like this. You don't want the tanks to show up everywhere like that. So how do we fix this? Basically, we need to find a way to tell the particles to be born behind this hill right here, right? All the way back there. So how do we do it? Okay. Right now, on creation, okay, we're telling our particles, let me bring back my outliner. All right. So on creation, we're telling these particles to be born whatever they want. Okay, basically that's the simplest way I can put this. Just be born whatever you want on this, as long as you're on the surface, of course. that's not, that creates this problem. Okay, the tanks just show up in front of the camera, which is kind of lame. That's why I put these little slopes. Okay, because I want to hide the tanks. I want them to come from back here. Okay, so how do we fix that? Well, basically we need to kill the particles that when they're born on the wrong place, and let only particles that are born here to survive and move forward. That's basically the logic. So you need to tell the particles, hey, if you are born in a position in V, okay, I'm going to zoom out here and hide my grid. Let's revise this from the top view, and then they are. So basically what I need to say is, if all you guys are born past, for example, this line right here, then die and be completely ignored from the simulation. So to do this, first we need to give the particles the ability to take an expression in life. So instead of living forever, we're going to change this to lifespan PP. That's step number 1. And step number 2 is going to be to put an expression on creation. We're going to kill them right before they're even born. Okay, you're just going to, but actually that's what happens. The particle tries to be born and then gets killed right away. So you need to put the expression on creation, and you need to say a condition. Now we know that this surface, okay, based on what we can see here, we know that the surface, we check the UVs and we know that normalized. Okay, that's fine. And given that I'm adding to the value of gold V a number, okay, every frame, and these particles are going from this end to that end, it means that 0 is right here and 1 is over there, right? So I just need to eyeball it for now. Okay, I'm going to eyeball that. I don't know. I said I don't want particles past this point. I'm going to say that is probably 0.05, 0.07. I don't know. Somewhere around there. So I'm going to say any particle that is born past that point is going to die. Let's go ahead and try. So you can say if the gold V of the particle, okay, is greater than 0.1. Let's start with 0.1 to make it more noticeable. Okay, 0.1. If that is true, okay, then we're gonna kill these particles. Okay, you can just say the lifespan pp of this particle is gonna be 0. But remember, because you're saying this, you need to say what's gonna happen if not, especially on creation. Otherwise, particles have no life, none of them. You can say if not, meaning else. Okay, then else is gonna be that these particles are going to have a life of whatever you want. Just make sure that it's long enough for these particles to complete the trail. Otherwise, if they die and they haven't reached the end, they're going to die in front of your camera. So keep that in mind. So any number, as long as you're sure that it has enough time. So perfect. This expression, let's run it. Okay, no mistakes. And let's go in and play it back and see what happens. So rewind and play. And you can see that now my tanks are being born only here, and they're rolling, okay, their way. Now, is that number enough? I don't know. Let's go ahead and check. I think it's too much. But let's go ahead and put our camera back, for example, somewhere there. Okay, let's go something like this, right, like on the ground. Perfect. And let's play this back slowly. Okay, let's go frame by frame and see how that goes. All right, so we get this guy here, which is being born right in front of me. So I think it's a bit too much. Almost there, but a bit too much. I'm going to go in and reduce that number. Okay, I'm going to go back to my expression, and I'm going to say 0.05, just to make sure that they're right behind that area. Hit OK, rewind and play, and now they come from behind the perfect. Okay, so that's working really good. And they come in, and they're going to do their thing, and that's fine with me. But we also have, I find it a bit of an issue, you know, especially if you want to have a constant flow of tanks. Let's say that you don't want to put a max count on your particles, and you want to have constantly, it's just very common that happens, right? You want to have a constant flow of tanks all the time. The problem that I have with that is that these tanks, when they reach the end, they stop and they stay there. So the amount of geometry gets, it starts to accumulate. Okay. Actually, let me take a look at. Oh, this actually tanks are dying at the end. So they're dying. We got lucky in this one. They're dying because I'm giving them a lifespan of 4, and it happens to be exactly what the amount of time that they need to reach the end. Let's say that you don't do that. Let's say that you give them longer life. Let's say that instead of giving them 4, you decided to give them a value of 8 for some reason. Okay. So these tanks are going to do their thing. They're going to reach the end, and they're going to get stuck there for a while. And the problem with that is that, like I was saying, the amount of geometry that you're emitting starts to accumulate quite heavily. Okay, this is kind of funny, but okay, I know what it is. Okay, well, this actually works at your advantage, but is like one of those happy accidents. You can see the tanks are actually disappearing at the end, and that's what I wanted to do next with a different way, different expression. But this is one of those happy accidents. I'll tell you what's going on, just so you know. Okay? I haven't done anything on purpose to create this effect. That's what I ultimately want. Have this tanks disappear when they reach the end of the surface. Okay, actually, this guy, we got lucky. Okay, this is what's supposed to happen with all of them. The tank's supposed to park itself. Because I haven't said anything what's going to happen to the particle when it reaches the end. I haven't said anything on my expression. Now, the reason it's disappearing in some of these cases is because the UVs are overlapping. All right? The UVs at the very, very edge, given that we're only using 0.05, okay, so very, very small number, it happens to overlap this edge with that edge, okay? And it's one of those UV things that happens, okay? I have no control over it. I could move the UVs a little bit and, scale them down a tiny bit, but that's why those tanks are disappearing. But the proper behavior is for this to happen. So, anyway, let's go ahead and put an expression and tell these tanks what to do, or these particles what to do when they reach the end. That's the correct thing to do. Now they start to park themselves. That's good. Perfect. Actually, it could be the overlap on the UV, so it also could be that I had tanks already born with the old lifespan. Given that all these guys are actually doing what they're supposed to do, there's no overlap. But it could happen, okay? When you have a more complicated geometry, it could be that, sometimes you have UVs that kind of wrap around themselves. So, don't be surprised if that happens to you. But in this case, this is what I was expecting to see. Okay, getting all these tanks to get stuck in here. And if you wanted to constantly be emitting tanks, this can get messy and very slow. So what you basically want to do is use a similar expression and tell these particles to die once they reach the end of the surface. So they're going to reach the end of the surface not when they're born. So there's no need to do anything on creation. I'm going to go straight to runtime. And I'm going to say if the goal in V now is greater than 0.97, for example, I don't know, something less than 1. Or you can say if it's greater or equal than 1, that's fine too. If you want to kill them right on the edge, doesn't matter. If that's true, then okay, lifespan PP is equal to 0. Just kill these guys. This way you're making sure that there's no waste of geometry at the end. Because since in runtime I can just go that and they'll disappear and new tanks will come up. New tanks come up because I have a max count. Okay, so when a particle dies, a new one gets born. So that's all fine and dandy. What else can we do here? For example, well, there's a few things that I want to see if you have any questions first. See if you actually ask me what I'm going to do next. Is there an expression to kill them once they move off the plane? They will never move off the plane, but I guess I answered the question. So, but they will never move off. Not yet. I mean, not in this scenario. Okay, they are goal to 100% of attraction to the surface, so they will never let go unless I force it. How do I determine the numbers to use for the UVs in the expression? I'm eyeballing it. I know that they go from 0 to 1. So I'm just kind of guessing. It's faster than, you could be more precise if you wanted to, but why? I think it's easier just to guess numbers, If you want something very, very specific, then there is a way to know. I mean, you could, let's say that you want to have, I don't know, you want to know exactly where this tank is his position, and you don't want to go anything past that exact point for some reason. Okay, so let's go in and find the particle, for example, let's say that you say that this is the point and no beyond this point. You don't want any particles past this. And, you know, it could happen. What you can do is grab the particles, okay? Let me just, for that I'm going to isolate my particles so I can see them easy, okay? So this guy determines where all of them are going to die, okay? So I'm going to right click on him and I'm going to select the particle. Well, first of all, you should change the particle type to numeric. The numeric type is the one that tells you data. It's like a debug mode, okay? You can see attributes on a number form, okay? So every time you change the particle type, remember to hit current. By default, it shows you the particle ID, but I could say, for example, to show me goal V. And goal V on this exact point is 0.644. So there you go. That's how you determine exactly. If I stop isolating, so this guy, this tank is tank position V exactly 0.644. Then you can just pipe that into your expression, and there you go. That is perfect line. So that is another way to do it. Let's see. Go back to the classroom. Cool. Any other questions, Rodrigo? I know you got here very late, but so far, any questions of what you saw? Rodrigo, are you there? Here it comes. No. Okay. No worries. No. I have no problem. I mean, if you're late, you're late. I didn't mean it that way. Sorry, I didn't mean to. No, that's fine. If you have questions, just let me know. I didn't mean to do that. All right, perfect. Let's go and keep moving. What I was hoping you guys will ask me is, how do I change the speed of each tank? Because all of them move at the same speed. That's not natural. So let's do something like that. Let's go in and randomize the way that these tanks move. Remember something? Well, no, I'm gonna continue actually. I'm gonna grab my tanks and I'm gonna make an attribute. Okay, this is a very neat way to do it. So you make an attribute. Okay, a new attribute per particle. Okay, and name this. It's gonna be a float in this case because I just want to give them a random number, and I'm gonna call this random. I don't know. I'm gonna call it random ID, just for any name. And remember, this is a per particle attribute. So all these particles will carry, okay, this attribute. And I'm going to put in there something. So I'm going to go into creation. And I'm going to give, you can do it anywhere. Okay, and I'm going to say that the random ID, the attribute that I just made, is equal to a random number between 0.01 and, for example, 0.015. Or even 0.02. Let's just be a bit more... Oh, come on. There you go. Why do I do this? Okay. Now, when these particles are born, they're each going to carry an attribute called this. They will have a number different on each particle and ranges between those two. I'm going to use that because now I can go on my runtime, and instead of saying everybody moves at this speed, remember that this is what makes the particles move. Instead of doing that, I'm going to say now you guys are going to move, because remember the goal V is a per particle attribute anyway. I'm going to say that you guys now move at the speed of random ID, which is different for every single guy. So now, you rewind, you hit play. You can see now there are tanks that pass each other. Okay, so it's a bit more organic. Okay, if you wanted, you could force the speed even more. Okay, you can see that now it's cool because you can there are tanks that are going a bit faster than others. So that works. You can see each one has their own purpose. Perfect. And I'm forcing the numbers a little. Okay, it looks a bit too crazy. You know, they're moving super fast, but you get the idea. Okay. Now, what can you do as well? Well, you can move them left to right as well. Let's go in and change that. So let's go on to runtime. Okay. And I'm going to, so far we've been playing with goal V, and that's what makes them go from one end to the other, but we haven't touched anything in goal U. So I could say that the goal U of this particle, okay, and what do you want to do? You want to, excuse me, sorry. You want to take the goal U of this particle, and you want to have these things turn to the left or to the right, whatever they want to do. I'm going to do it first on all of them the same. So I can say goal u, for example, is equal to the sine of time. Okay, and I'm going to, well, let's analyze this first. I don't know if I think I showed you last week already. Yeah, the sine curve. So we talked about this part. You can go back to the previous recording and double check that. If you have questions in the classroom, that's what you're here for. Okay, so ask me if you don't remember something. I'll help you out. But basically, the sine of time is a curve that goes from -1 to 1. Okay. So what can I do here? Well, I can say, well, the goal u of the particle is going to be adding to itself this, but this is too much. Okay, a value of -1 to 1. Remember that the surface goes from 0 to 1, so it's going to be too much, I think. So what I'll do is, but I can show you the result. Why not? It's free. So let's go and put that, and you will see now these tanks are going to go nuts. Okay, so they're there, and they're all gonna turn at some point. If we have enough time, we'll see they're all gonna go and turn probably. But they're doing some funky chicken dance there. So it's too much. Okay, so what I'll do is lower this number by multiplying this curve, for example, by 0.1. So it basically, I'm taking the amplitude of that curve down, and instead of being -1 to 1, it's going to be 0.1, -0.1 to 0.1, right? So now it should be a bit easier to see. So let me just move back. And if it's too, actually this is a good way to visualize a sine curve. You can see, rewind and play, they're all turning, aligning themselves to that value, and then eventually they will all turn to the left if we have enough time. But I want to show you what it can do. So if you modify that expression, and instead of being the sine of time, or you can say the sine of time, for example, multiply by 4, and then you will see a lot more here. So there you go. You will see how these tanks are going there, and they're going to turn to the left. And then they're all going to stay on the other side, and then go turn to the right. You get the idea, right? So this is one way to move them, but that's not very natural. You want to move them all differently and a lot less. So it's easy. You make another attribute, per particle float, and you're going to call these guys random. Let's say random u. Okay. Go in there, go back. I'm going to go in creation now, and I'm going to give them a bit of a range. So I'm going to say that my random u is going to be equal, let's say, let me just think a little bit here. Let's give ourselves, for example, a range that goes from from 0.01. Just try to think what kind of good range I can get for this. No, let's do this. Let's do a random 5. Let's try this technique first. Okay, so random 5, number from 0 to 5 to each one of these guys. What am I going to use this for? I'm going to go back to my expression in here, and I'm going to say, okay, this expression here, I'm going to take the time. Basically, what I want to do is offset the curve. It seems like these tanks are doing something, okay? Let me just rewind and play here, but you can see that these tanks, okay, they're all turning. Okay, so it does work. It's too much amplitude on the expression, but they all seem to be doing something. Okay, so that's fine. What I want to do is offset it, because they're all turning to the left at the same time, and they're all turning to the right at the same time. I want each one of them to be different. So what I can do is offset the time value on this expression. Okay, so first I'm going to get rid of this multiply by 4, and I'm going to say that the time is going to be actually plus my value of random u. What will this do? Okay, for these particles here, goal u, okay, is a per particle attribute. So each particle will carry a different value. And I'm saying then that the value of time is going to be different from each of those tanks. And it's going to be, for example, some of them are going to be time. Those that got a value of 0, then it's time. Those that got a value of 3, for example, is going to be actually the sine of time plus 3. So the curve is offset in time. So this automatically will create a change. Okay, so if I close that, now we get Okay, let's see. Well, I'm still getting all the times doing that. Let's go back and double check that everything is fine here. Okay, so the random u is a value from 0 to 5. And let's go back to the expression, and goal u is going to be equal to the sine of time plus this. So that should be okay. But it's not really liking it, so let me just make sure that everything is good. I'm going to try, let's say, value of 25. No. Okay, let's go in and change this expression a little bit. And what I'll do is I will use, instead of the sine, I'm going to use the noise of time, okay, which I showed you last week, which is a different, it's similar to the curve for the sine, but it's just a bit turbulent. Okay, so it's not that smooth. So this is automatically going to help. Let's try this one. Let's see what it will do. Okay, I'm not really digging what we're getting here, so let me just make sure that we're getting something funny here. Of course, I forgot to put the random. I hope that some of you, let me just, for the hell of it, let me see if you guys were trying to tell me that in there. Nah, you guys should have helped me out there. You missed this one with me. We all missed it, but I forgot to put random. Okay. So now I can leave it at random 25, it's not a problem. But basically, I was giving all the particles a value of 25, so it wasn't any random at all. Now it's fine. It won't error, okay, because I'm just assigning a number. That's why we didn't get any red messages here or anything. So that's why. So I could leave, if you wanted, the sign of time so you can see the difference. Okay, so this is the sign of time plus that number. Now is definitely offset on each particle. Okay, so some go to the left, some go to the right. So that's good. And now what we need to do is just lower the expression. Right now this is still too much. Okay, this sign of time, even multiply by 0.1 is too much. You can just lower this by doing like a little bit, okay, 0.01 for example. So it's not that strong, the effect. So you get a little bit of turning. If you want to amplify that, now you know how, you can just always go in, because it might be hard for you to see it. Now you can just go in here and amp that number. I'm going to do it 5 times more. So you can see now that this might lead into situations like you can see tanks going through themselves. That's inevitable. I mean, that's the instancer, okay? But at least you can see them turn, which is interesting. And now they get all the behavior that you want, right? So they're born in the right place, they die when they reach the end, and they're turning, which is great. So this is all for this part. Now, you had a question, Julius, about how can I, let me just read it again because it's for this next part is good. You were asking me if there's an expression to kill them once they move off the plane. Okay? And I was saying that they won't move off the plane unless I force it to. Okay? And that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is start to migrate this example into a waterfall. But first we're going to use, for the hell of it, so you can get a crack out of it. Let's start to turn this exact scene into a waterfall. I'm going to leave the tanks just for fun. So what I want to do is, and I use this, okay, that's the heart and soul of what I did on Avatar for the waterfalls, okay, so it does work and it's very well, used. I'm going to get particles flowing along the surface. Think of this as the river, right? And I want to tell the particles that once they reach the end, instead of dying, I want them to let go. And then let the dynamics and force fields and everything else take over, okay? So first, let's go ahead and how do we do this? If we need to tell each particle, then the order is going to be, once you reach the end, then let go of the surface. That's the simplest thing. meaning that this is on a per particle basis. Okay, you cannot tell all of them at the same time let go. You need to track this individually. What am I tracking? Well, I'm tracking the goal. Okay, either the goal U or the goal V, but I'm tracking something related to the goal, and I'm tracking it on a per particle basis. So if you take a look in here, you have goal U, goal V, but you also have goal double P. Okay, goal PP equals a per particle goal. This number is key. Okay, this is the one that's going to allow you to tell Maya, in this case, tell these particles to let go. So let's go in and put an expression on creation, which is not extremely necessary, but I think it's a good practice at the beginning. And you can just only going to say the goal PP is equal to 1. That is implied already. Okay, it's implied already because my goal weight was set to 1. I want these particles to get stuck to the surface. So you could live without this bit, but I think it's a good practice to remember to put it. So put that in there on creation, and then what I'm going to say on runtime is something very simple. I'm going to tell the particles, if you pass this point, okay, instead of killing them, okay, I'm just going to say that the goal PP, the goal per particle, is going to be equal to 0. That means that these particles at that specific point will have no more attachment to the surface. Very, very simple. You can see only one change. Hit edit, okay, and if you even continue playing, it's fine with me. You go in, and you can see these particles, or these tanks, start to let go. And they do whatever they want. Why are they moving? Why they continue to move? Well, because these particles carry velocity with them. Okay, these particles, they're moving along the surface and they have a velocity. Once they let go of the surface, that velocity will carry with them. And these tanks are behaving at this point as if they were in space, in outer space, in a vacuum. Okay, because there's no force fields in here. There's no drag field. There's no friction of anything. So this particle is like having something in space. Okay, you give them a little push, and those things will continue to move forever, unless there's another force that will stop them. So that's what's happening in this case. That's why these guys are moving. Remember that these tanks will have the ability to lose energy. Okay, these particles could lose energy if you wanted by switching the conserve. Okay, this is the guy that determines if they're in space or not, pretty much. So right now the conserve is 1, meaning they won't lose any energy. So you could change that number, and you always should change that number unless you're working on a film that happens in outer space, and they specifically tell you there's no gravity or nothing else. So, 0.98. Okay, so that's one thing. But what I'm more interested in to show you is that is this part. Okay, so basically they're letting go. You can see that they're moving in different, slightly different angles. Yeah, and that has to do with the point where they're letting go on the surface and how the surface is pointing in that direction. So that's what determines in which direction they actually let go. So take a look at this last one they're coming in. He's let go at that particular time facing down, this one too, and that's why they behave in this way. Now they're free. They're free to do whatever they want. So I could grab these particles and go ahead and plug in a gravity field, for example. And just for fun, if you want, just drop any other just to see, grab like a vortex field and have them do crazy stuff. Let's see. So now these particles have a gravity field and a vortex field connected to them. So let's see what they do. Let's go in place. Let's do a different angle, something like this. So now they're going to flow along the surface, be attached to it completely, doing their thing. Once they reach the end, okay, those force fields are affecting them, but right now the goal is the one that matters, the one that tells them the main order. But once they let go, take a look at what's happening. These guys start to fly, and they start to turn, and they start to spin, and that's just them responding to the vortex field. Okay, so here they go. I don't know if it's easier probably to see that this way. They're doing their thing, and now they're free to move, and you can kill them with expressions. They still have a lifespan, so eventually they will disappear in midair. Okay, I gave them 8 seconds, so I don't know, but here you go. That's your. Once they start to die, which is the funny part too. Once they begin to die, eventually, okay, new tanks will show up here, so they will continue to flow, and then we'll let go and start flying again. So because of the max count, so that's something just to keep in mind. But that's not like we want to do a waterfall, so I have a scene file here, which is very simple. I mean, we don't have much time, so it's good that I spend most of the time on this part, which is takes more information. But if you wanted to do a bit of a waterfall, before that, let me just check on my guys here. Okay, no questions. You guys are clear? Everything good? Is that goal PP understood? Beautiful. All right. So on something, like as a waterfall, then you will have particles. What I did here is just basically, this is just a sine deformer, a wave deformer in Maya, just a regular. I think Igor might cover that on his course, the intro to Maya. It's just the basic, there's nothing dynamic in here, okay? That's just a deformer. I'm just doing this to kind of simulate poorly, okay? Or to give you the impression that this is a river, right? So quickly, you can grab this and emit particles from this. Okay, so it's a surface. We can call this water. You can see how quickly you can do it. Grab the particles, grab your surface, particles goal, give them a goal weight of 1, done. Now go automatically without even looking at them, and you know what they do. Go in here, add goal view and V. Go back into the expressions, tell them to be born. If you want, they can be born at the beginning or everywhere. I don't know, I don't care in this case. Goal U equal to parent U. Copy that. Paste it, and then change the U for the V, and then this is going to make them be born everywhere they want. I'm going to stay right here, and I'm going to say goal PP is equal to 1. We know what we need to do already, right? So that's done in there. I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to say, if I'm going to guess which one is U and which one is V direction. If it doesn't work, I'll just swap the letters. But if the goal view is greater than 0.99, for example, then the goal PP is equal to 0, just so they let go at the end. That part is taken care of. Let's select the particles. You see, you don't even have to keep playing and looking at the result, right? Make a gravity field. And if you want, you can make a drag field or something with no attenuation. All right, so that's gonna do something for me. And last, I'm gonna give these particles a life. So I'm gonna use the random range, and I'm gonna give them a lifespan probably of between 3 and 5 using this. Beautiful. Let's take a look and see what happens. So these particles are flowing very slowly. Well, they're not flowing yet. I'm sorry. They're being born, and actually good that I did this. They're not moving yet. I forgot that part. But basically, you can see that some of them at the tip of the surface, at the end, they're falling. And those happen to be born in areas where the expression is telling them to fall. So that's getting there. The only thing missing was to grab the particles and go into the expression and runtime, and then just move them. And basically, what you need to be careful with this is you need to put this expression to let go after you move them. If you don't do that, then it doesn't work the same way. So you have to say that the goal U plus equal 0.01. Depends on how much you want to. You will do a master control like I like, okay, ideally. And that's what I did on Avatar 2, if you want to know. So I have a main rig, okay, that controls many things. You should do the same, okay? So something that controls how fast they move along the surface will be something driving this number. Something indicating when do they let go of the surface will drive this number. Number of particles, magnitude of the gravity, the drill with the rest, right? So it's always best to do that. Now we have particles that move and let go. And that's how you start a waterfall. Okay, well, this is not a class on waterfalls, right? It's a class on goals, but this is how you begin doing something like that, okay? I will probably do one of the case studies, I will just do only waterfalls, probably in one of those. But this is how you do it. Okay, so you put a lot of particles in there, and you put a lot of expressions and things. But the backbone of it is this. You just grab them, put a wireframe. Is this method where you can see that they respect the curvature of the surface, and then just let go. This is normal to happen. Okay, you get particles that are shoot out and particles that fall straight. Is what I was saying earlier. Okay, these particles are born in a position where they're meant to let go, and they have no velocity. They don't get to move. That's why they just fall straight. So if you want to solve this issue, it's just a matter of telling them, telling the particles on creation not to be born that far. So for that, you will do. Well, first we need to give them then a lifespan PP. So. And then you will go into the expression, and then you will say if the goal hue is greater, I don't know how, I think I said 0.99 or something, but you can say if it's greater than 0.9, I don't know. Then kill them. Sorry, I forgot to put that. If not, then I'm just gonna copy this, man. I'm lazy. Copy this, paste that in there, and then whatever. Give them any amount of time you want to, or a random, for example. All right, something like this. That way you don't get particles being born on the tip, so that problem's gonna go away by doing this. Okay, so all the particles have some velocity. Coolio. So from here you put some forces, you make it look pretty, you use multi-points and all, you render them nicely, and it will look eventually like a waterfall. So perfectly on time, but I do have time to answer questions. So out of everything we talked about today, how do you guys feel, Julius and Rodrigo? Applications of this method on the assignment of this week, I don't see much. Probably if you wanted to do something, some I don't know, tanks or something on the distance on the beach on the main assignment for the Normandy assignment, then you could do something like this easily. Perfect. Well, expressions are not that hard. I mean, I will continue to use them in every course. So Julius, if you're watching other courses of mine, then you will see it more and more and more. But it's not really that hard. It's just it takes a little bit of practice. You will see that in a couple of classes you will change your opinion completely. Resource for learning expressions. The Maya help is very good. If you go into your Maya help, you can go, let me just open it up. Right, so if you scroll on the left side, if you go to technical documentation, then you can open the commands tab. And here you have all the different commands that you can type in Mel. And that on its own is not enough, but if you go, for example, let's say to dynamics, anything, okay, let's say that you want to do, I don't know, click on the emitter, for example, or gravity, for example, okay? You click on any of those, it tells you what it does, okay? But at the bottom of every one, you have examples. So, for example, how you create a gravity field from the command line, okay, with Mel. This is how you do it. And how do you move it around? How do you change the, whatever, So this is a good way to kind of reverse engineer things. And you can see that they're clearly separated into tabs of, what you can do. Fluids, okay, particles, hair. So, this is a good way to go. And if not, I'm sure there is another book. Well, there are many books online and things, but by practicing, I'll make sure that if you follow all my courses, Julius, if you're feeling a bit that is a bit tricky, I would recommend you not to start watching the recordings for level 2 and 3 yet. because it will get even messier, right? So it's go in order, finish this course with me live, like you're doing it, and then watch the recordings for level 2 or level 3. And I promise you, by the time you're done with those videos, you will be perfectly comfortable doing things with Mel. It's totally fine. Especially the last 4 weeks of level 3 is only Mel scripting, nothing else. So you'll be fine. Yeah. But try to watch them in order, because if you start, jumping from one level to the other, it might get confusing. Probably. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. But give that a try. All right, guys. It's my time. So for those, let me stop the sharing. For those of you watching the recording, as usual, thank you, and I'll see you next week.